Torch Trust, Sight Loss 101, in conversation with Tracy Williamson.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Sight Loss 101, where I have the opportunity to interview people who have experienced sight loss of different forms so that I can learn as a sighted person a little more about what it's like to live in their shoes. Today I have the great pleasure of having Tracy Williamson with me, a name I'm sure many will recognize. Tracy is an author and a speaker, a prophetess in some ways, and it's a delight to have her with us now. So Tracy, thank you for being with me and doing this. And I wonder if you would start by telling us a little bit about a sort of sketch of your life and how your hearing loss and then your sight loss has developed over that time.
Right, well, thank you, Jeffery, to be part of this. And when I was very little, 2.5, in fact, I had a serious illness, encephalitis, which came out of me having measles, and it causes inflammation of the brain. And so I was rushed into hospital and was in hospital for nearly a year. And the thing that was most concerning to the doctors was that I was kind of paralysed to begin with, in the sense that my coordination went completely out the window and I had no control of my arms and legs. And so when I eventually came out of hospital after lots of physio to start me walking again, no one really realised that my hearing and eyesight had also been affected. And it took quite a long time, especially with the hearing. The eyesight, it was sort of diagnosed that I had problems soon after that because I developed a kind of astigmatism in one of my eyes, and I had to wear a patch. And then I eventually went to school. I looked a bit like Nelson because I had this big black patch over one eye. And then I started wearing glasses and I was basically short-sighted. But what they didn't know was that the encephalitis had affected my brain and the ability of the brain to kind of transmit the messages correctly to the nerves and then through to the various parts. Although the short-sightedness was kind of corrected by the glasses, the thing that wasn't known and that I, of course, didn't know either was that I wasn't really necessarily correctly understanding what I was seeing. And that was also true with the hearing. And when I had hearing tests, when I eventually started school, I passed them because I could hear the different sounds. And so I would tap the button and things like that. And it did show a little bit of loss. But what wasn't known with the hearing, similar with the sight, was that I wasn't really comprehending what I heard. So there would just be a huge kind of ripple of sound in my head. And at that point, it was more that I was hard of hearing. And I was short-sighted, pretty badly short-sighted. But as time has gone on, I'm now in my mid-50s. And from about my mid-30s, it started to get quite a deal worse in both areas. And so I stopped being able to kind of engage in conversations with people. It had always been a struggle. And I'd missed loads of things, but I'd been able to understand some speech. And with my sight, the biggest change as I got older was that I couldn't read print anymore. And I'm a massive lover of books, and books have always been my life, really. I mean, I read partly to compensate for not hearing. But I'd always prided myself that even though I couldn't see lots of things, I could see print and I could read. But now I can hardly read print at all. If it's giant print, I can read that. And I read books on Kindle. But I had to get rid of about 300 books that I had, physical books, because I couldn't read them anymore. And the other thing, just to say with the sight, and this was a very major thing, really, that I didn't mention just now, was that because I can't kind of comprehend what I see often, then that really affects me being able to lip read. I can't lip read at all. I can see lips moving, but I can't understand what they're doing. I'm just completely blank. And similarly with sign language, people might try to sign, I know the sign for thank you, but people do that in shops. And I feel a little happy feeling inside that I've seen that and recognise it. If people do normal sign, I just go sort of blank, even though I do know a few signs to do them. But I can't kind of understand them. And so that has made my deafness a great deal worse, in a sense. I'm now severely deaf.
Yeah.
In what I actually physically hear as well. But it's made me more like a profoundly deaf person, in effect, because I can't understand any conversation, even the simplest things like someone's name. I might hear the consonants of their name, like they're called Jane. But there's hundreds of ladies' names beginning with J.
Yeah.
So I may go through Jean, Joan, June, Joanne. Eventually I might get it right, but usually I have to ask them to write it down. Whereas if I could lip read, it would be so much quicker.
Yeah. So, Tracy, how are you managing to have this conversation with me now? Can you explain what the support is and maybe help us with understanding why your head has gone down?
I'll show you here. Anyway, if you can see her there. Yeah, you may see she's got something on her lap, which is a keyboard. And Marilyn is diligently typing away everything that Tim is asking. And it's coming up here on my iPad. And so we type everything, really. And people come to see us, and socially, or maybe for ministry purposes. And we'll sit together now that we can actually have people in the house again. And Marilyn will type. Or when we have Zoom meetings, Marilyn will type. And amazingly, it can even go through walls. And she can type from a different room. And it will come up on my iPad. But I've also this last year discovered this app called Live Transcribe, which is a Google app and works on Android phones. And this means, in a rather hit-and-miss way, I can hold this out to someone, like maybe if someone comes to the door, and I can say, speak into this because I'm a deaf person and can't hear you. And they will always look a bit shocked. I mean, they start to speak, and sometimes it comes up with rather naughty things. I went for my vaccine jab the other day. And the doctor asked me if I would describe myself as a British white or something else. And it came up on there as, are you British white or a lioness? And I thought I'd really like to be a lioness. But these are a great help. Technology is fantastic, really. Other than that, I might use a notebook. And sometimes Marilyn and I, or other people that know it, use the deaf-blind sign language, which is finger spelling, like A-E-I-O-U, and all the consonants on the hands, the whole alphabet. But that has got a bit more difficult as I've got older as well, because I'm not so able to see what the letters are, but it does work, it is good, if I take my time with it.
Yeah. So a combination of your technology and a great friend make this possible.
Yes, that's right. Yes. I mean, people's support is invaluable because I'm dependent really on people like Marilyn helping me. And it's made me discover the kindness of people a lot more. And so when people have recognised that Marilyn types for me, for example, when we started going to our present church, Marilyn would come, because it was both the same church for both of us, and she would start typing everything that people would say, and people noticed. And up until then, they thought they just needed to mouth at me like that, which of course just didn't work for me. But after they saw Marilyn typing, then they started offering to type if Marilyn got tired or couldn't come. And so that was wonderful, really, just letting people know, and people were willing then to help.
That's wonderful. Tracy, I'd love to know, with all these challenges that you've had, what difference has your faith made in your life in coming to terms with these challenges?
Well, one of the things I grew up with that was difficult, and I think a lot of people with disabilities feel this, maybe for different reasons, and that's a lack of self-esteem, a feeling of not matching up, of being inferior. For me, that was really rammed home because I had a difficult home life, and someone in my family would shout at me repeatedly that I was useless and mental. And it was actually taught at school that I had learning disability, because the deafness wasn't discovered till I was 12. And so all these things made me feel really low in myself, in my sense that I couldn't achieve, that I had nothing really to give. And after I became a Christian, God began to do a deep healing work in my life. And that was one of the areas where, step by step, I began to realise, as he drew me to verses in the Bible that showed me a very different portrait of myself. For example, Psalm 139, where it says, for you created me, you formed my innermost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. And I realised from there, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, that God was saying, you are not a failure, you're not inferior, you're not lacking, you've got physical weaknesses, but I've made you and I delight in you. And as I heard those truths through the Bible, or through people around me in my life, like Marilyn and other friends, it was as if a faith began to grow in me, that despite my weaknesses, I could be used by God and had a purpose in life. And it also enabled me to kind of let down my guard and ask people for help. And that took a while, really. I mean, I remember before I was really acknowledging that I had a sight problem, because the hearing was always the foremost thing. Yeah. But I went on a flight to America, I think, on my own. And I'd never done that before. And Marilyn organised help for me. But I didn't really want to be guided. I mean, my sight was a lot better then. Now I would happily put my arm through someone and let someone guide me. But I didn't want to be guided then. And I just wanted to make sure that I got to the right gate. And so when I arrived in America, this assistance person came to the door of the plane and said, we've come to take you out to get your baggage. And they offered me their arm, and I said, no, thank you, I don't need guiding. I just need to follow you and to make sure I get to the right place. And he said, but we've got you down as being nearly blind. You must let us guide you. And I said, no, honestly, please just go ahead and I will follow. So he said, rather nettled, okay then, have it your way. Turned around and walked off. And I took a step forward and tripped over the ramp and crashed in his bug. Nearly knocked him flying. I didn't see levels easily, but I had acknowledged that. And so that was one of the things I had to face and realise that I needed help. at times, and now a lot more.
Thank you. And Tracy, one of my experiences would be that in the challenges that we face, there are also gifts. I wonder what you identify as being some of the gifts in your life, of the very challenges, the hearing loss, the sight loss that you have lived with.
Well, I think one of the things that deafness does, and now the sight loss too, is that it can often make you feel on the edge of things. And I don't easily recognize people. People come towards me out the road, and they may be a best friend. My sister has come to pick me up sometimes, and I haven't known she's in the car park because I haven't recognized the person waving at me. And so these things can make you feel a bit isolated, on the edge of things. And the hearing to it now, I'm always in a crowd, but never really part of it. And out of that kind of struggle, if you like, has come that really deep empathy and passion, if that's not too strong a word, to love people who are on the fringe. And it's not necessarily because they're deaf or with sight problems. It may be because they're wounded, because they're suffering with mental health issues, because they're struggling with poverty and feel they don't fit in that particular society that they're in, all sorts of reasons. But I feel my heart so kind of is aware and feeling the pain of someone that's hovering around on the edge of the group and not knowing if they really feel they belong, or trying to get a word in but feeling a bit too shy to raise their voice and make themselves known.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great gift that the deafness has brought to me, really, in a way, and the sight loss too.
Thank you. That is beautiful. Tracy, I also wonder one of the things I love to find out about people is what makes you come alive? What are the things or the thing that really sort of makes your heart sing and makes you feel absolutely on top of the world?
Well, there's all sorts of things that do that. I would say it's that real awareness of God's love. Something may make me suddenly realise it's a verse I come across in the Bible. But when He's spoken to me in my heart, He has opened my innermost ears to hear His voice. And there was one time when I was feeling really low in myself as a new Christian. And He opened my heart to a beautiful scene as I walked along a lane. And as I looked at this beautiful view, He spoke in my heart and said, "You are more beautiful to me than all of this." And that absolutely stunned me. And because of the things that had been said over me, that I was so ugly as a person, not just physically, but ugly in who I was. But He was speaking affirmation to me, and that made me come alive and know that there was a beauty in me that He had put there. And so that makes my heart sing when I hear the voice of God speaking in me, and when I'm in the privileged position of being able to teach other people to hear His voice as well. And when people hear Him for the first time, that's overwhelming. It's something glorious, especially when they hear Him affirming them. And they know for the first time that He, the creator of this world, has spoken personally to say, "I love you," or "You've got this gift," or "I'm proud of you." It's something amazing. And on a more mundane way, simple things set my heart on fire. You may be astonished to know, but music does. And I used to love music when I heard more. And when I joined Marilyn, I used to sit on the stage with her, and we had a little speaker next to us, and I would hear the sound of the song, even if not exactly how it was. But the kind of momentum and the feel of that music would really stir my heart. And I've got a memory of it, even though I can't really hear it now. And similarly beautiful landscapes and things like that. And of course, I've already mentioned reading.
Yeah.
And books. Well, books, exclamation mark. I love them. I love reading them and I love writing them. And I hope to write a lot more, but who knows? That's up to God. But
that's great. Thank you. And I wondered, Tracy, out of your ministry, whether you feel there has emerged a sort of a core message that is God's message through you to the world. What is that?
I think the heart of it is almost like the strapline of our ministry, in fact. Our ministry is called MBN Trust, but the strapline is restoring lives through intimacy with God. And I love that kind of core message that anyone's life can be restored. And I experienced abuse and rejection and all sorts as I was growing up. Yeah, God has restored me and put me in a place where I can help others. And that's what I love to communicate to people, that whatever you've done, I mean, there are people that have done things that they feel so broken and ashamed by, but God loves you. God loves you if you've been abused and broken by the people that you should have been able to trust and been nurtured by. God sees you as beautiful. God can make you whole. The love of Jesus draws you to his heart, and he wants to speak affirmation to you and lead you into his plans. He has a plan for every one of us that's just right for who we are. That's what we end up communicating again and again. We give our events different themes, but it always, in some way or another, comes down to that message in what Marilyn sings and in what I share.
That's fantastic. I have a little tear in my eye, so thank you. I wondered, just as to the end with Tracy, whether you have a top tip for me. So as a sighted person, as I've not met you yet in person, but maybe if I do, or for other people, meeting folk who have the same kind of challenges that you do, what's your kind of tip for us about how best to engage with you, or what not to do, maybe?
Well, with my sightless, I would love it if people would take the time to find out what really helps me the most. And for example, I love things written down so that I can hear, but I can't see what's written down unless it's written with a pen that's got good contrast.
Yes.
Like a solid black kind of ink, rather than a scratchy little biro or a pencil. And similarly with graphics and things like that. And I spent ages the other night trying to set up online banking. And it was with Barclays, but Barclays are pale blue against white. And it wouldn't get big on the screen, even on the iPad, it wouldn't scrunch bigger. So then I was using the magnifying glass to get from the iPad to the screen reader of the pin thing. And it all got really complicated and took about 4 hours. But obviously I couldn't ask them, but I wish organisations in that would think more about putting contrast in things. And I'm really happy for someone to point out what's around. And I'd love to know who people were, because I don't necessarily recognise them. And when people just presume you know them and recognise them, it can get really embarrassing.
Yeah.
And so, and for things like in church, I mean, everything's put up on a screen. Paper is old-fashioned nowadays, but it would be just wonderful if notices could be given on a sheet that I could take and read with a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Because I just can't read them on the screen. And similarly with song words. I wouldn't want song words on a sheet exactly, but if they could be put up without beautiful scenes in the background, but just the words on a plain background, then I could see them and join in. And so they're the sorts of things that help me. But the key tip overall is that people ask. Because with both the hearing and eyesight, there's people presume my lip read, as I've already said. And so then if they just asked, and I could say, please write it down in a dark pen. Please be patient. Being patient is the most important thing, I guess, because everything takes time. And people have to discover more of that time to give to a person who can't hear and can't see well. So that's the key. Please be patient and bear with me.
Tracy, thank you. That has been so interesting and such a privilege to hear all of that stuff in your story. So thank you, bless you, and bless you in your ongoing ministry. You clearly have touched many people, and my prayer is that that will continue still over many years. So thank you and bless you.
Thank you. It's been a real joy being with you, and thank you for the privilege of being part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Sight Loss 101. For more information on Torch, call 01858 438 260.